Okay, so now we're in part 2, which is the second half of the summer. I just finished with the N9 camp and the vampires and what happened there. So now we're in the second half of the summer, and we start with camp number 5, and that's the Desnor camp. And so this camp begins with the adventurers sort of gathering together to investigate the area, kind of keep the area safe. There's a little bit of Daprakrula activity to the south, but that's not their main concern. Mostly they seem to be more concerned with local problems, with odd creatures showing up, strange, sort of little demon-y things, sort of odd encounters like this that seem a little bit strange to them. And so they start to investigate that a bit. They also have there's a mission on the board about some weird stones that cause people to forget things. And they immediately hone in on that mission and go out to where people are disappearing and, losing their minds. And they discover that there's a way to get to this shrine of Minamoto across this lake called Mist Lake. And they managed to get into the shrine, and some of them were sort of trapped there, having to continuously go through this dungeon. And while they're doing that, the other group continuously is searching around, discovering that there are more and more of these little demon creatures, and that a lot of these creatures seem to be from some place called the Shadowlands, which is sort of like an inverted world or inverted plane of Desnor, and that it has sort of all demonic creatures and things that prey on honor, and they're starting to fight these creatures and realizing where are they all coming from, and they're not really sure. So they think they maybe need to hunt down these demon creatures and sort of stop them, and they start discovering that maybe they're coming from the swamps, and so they start to kind of poke into the swamps and check around. Meanwhile, they're also sort of deciphering some sort of old papers they found, and the papers seem to be referencing some kind of person and his taking care of somebody, and it's kind of confusing why these papers seem to be important, but they do keep just deciphering them and figuring out what they mean. And they managed to finally think that it means that there's maybe some kind of location that the papers are talking about, and that maybe that's the place they could go to. And they try to kind of get to that place, but then you can never quite get there. Every time they try to get there, they kind of take a wrong turn, or they get a little bit lost, or they get attacked, or something sort of stops them, and so they never end up quite getting to the place they need to get to. Well, meanwhile, the other group is still trying to get through this dungeon to this Minamoto shrine. And they managed to get there, and they're having to collect all these little statues and little golden statues that are all part of some sort of game or something. They're not sure what they are, but they managed to collect them all. They're having odd encounters with some sort of figure of history, who they discover later is Minamoto. And they end up encountering this being, and they end up having to engage in a game, which they don't know the rules to. So they're trying to play a game. It's sort of a board game. It seems a little bit like chess, but also a bit not. It's sort of hexagonal, and they have to move their pieces around, and there's some sort of rules they don't understand. They manage to play a couple games and actually win in the end, which seems to release something, and they can kind of go on succeed, and they've gotten some sort of treasures which are item spirits that they've attached to them, and they can summon the item spirits and they can have them do things. But they feel like they kind of missed something there, they could have done something bigger, but they didn't quite do it. So while they're fighting the Shadowlands and trying to keep the Shadowlands at bay and trying to stop the Shadowlands as much as they can, they decide they need to go back to that shrine and try to solve it the right way, because they realize there's a way to win it where instead of taking any pieces on the board, you just sort of win, but you win through honor. Basically, you win by saying I could have won, but I could have won. But I could have taken you, but I don't. This would be a bit like trying to play a game of chess with someone, but never taking any of their pieces, just moving your pieces around and until you get them in checkmate, but you never ever take a piece. That's the kind of that level of chess. So that's the kind of thing they're trying to do. It takes about 2 hours of someone trying to do this while they're also on a fight and trying to fight demons, and demons are coming from the Shadowlands, and they realize there's a demon gate open. They're pretty sure that the Daprakrula are somehow involved, but they don't know how exactly. And so they manage to fight off these demon creatures, but they can't actually deal with the demon gate, and they never get to this location. And pretty soon the demons are just pouring out of the swamps, and they manage to finish the game and they sort of it ends in a draw in the end. They can't really actually win it because it just takes so long, and then actually the end up pieces are in kind of a stalemate like you would have in chess. So in the end, they get a boon, but the boon is not maybe as powerful as it could have been, and they ask to sort of release the ancient treasures of the past into the world. And so there is sort of a surge from the shrine where beings sort of emerge from the shrine that seem like maybe old item spirits and things to kind of protect it, and maybe a few like deity-like beings are in that area, and that sort of area sort of becomes a hub of like protected area, of protected space. But the just Desnor itself really suffers from this. Desnor ends up being overwhelmed by a lot of all these Shadowlands creatures. The swamps itself becomes like the Shadowlands proper. All the Shadowlands effects are in play there, which are horrifically bad. Everywhere in Desnor becomes like partially Shadowlands, and so unless you're on a main road or in a city, anywhere in Desnor now, you are basically subject to Shadowlands-like effects. That's a major problem to be dealt with because the Shadowlands is like a demon realm. So that's the camp number 5, the Shadowlands camp. So camp number 6 was then in Blackspire, and the adventurers find themselves up in the mountains at Delvis Mithril, which is the capital city of Blackspire. Blackspire being the most powerful nation in all of Rokron at this time. And the Shaman Council's kind of there, and they've gathered people there because they're having this major problem with the Doors of Primal Fire. One of the 3 doors doesn't work anymore. Anybody who tries to go through that door gets murdered or dies, or just doesn't come back at all. And so they decide they need to do something about this, and they've got adventurers in the area. It's one of the things they're kind of concerned about. But nobody can really complete this, and they're worried it's going to cause kind of a civil war, because the way they choose their next leader is by using these doors, and you have to go through the doors to become eligible, and if you can't go through the doors, then it seems like not a fair system, because only some people got to go through the doors and other people didn't, and this is going to cause a civil war. So they're kind of like concerned about this, but also they're concerned about the fact that, you know, they're kind of being hedged in by different forces. The Dapper Krula troops are all around. There's 6 Dapper Krula in the area, all of them trying to take over different regions. There's Infernals that are sort of pressing on them. There's other just little local tribes and clans of Thistavangine, different groups that are trying to, like, you know, press on them. So they're sort of like fighting all these guys off, and they're doing these totem ceremonies. And as they're doing the totem ceremonies, they as they're, you know, going on missions, the first day they get Mouse, and which is all about innocence and sort of looking at things close up, and that seems, you know, not very interesting. They've gotten Mouse before, but it does seem sort of thematic that it's on the first day and it's a creature of innocence, which they find interesting. And as they continue on doing more of their quests and discovering more things to do, more missions to complete, on the second day they get the Totem Eagle, which, you know, they also seems a bit thematic, because Eagle is a bit about spotting things. It's almost like the opposite of Mouse, where it's all about spotting things that you know, don't see, and being able to, you know, see through things and see through illusions. So they begin to hunt down different people using Eagle, and they start to discover that the Dark Spikes, who are considered to be a very evil group of Uruk-hai in the region, are having some sort of civil war of their own. That some of them are, they're always believed to be sort of demon worshippers, and they have all these demon powers, and they're considered to be like the major, most evil group in Blackspire. But some of the characters there actually have this link to this particular group, and have been raised by sort of a subsect of followers of the Dark Spikes, who believe that their powers are actually not what they seem. Dark Spikes have this ability to sort of summon demons. They can do deadly damage with spears. They're known to be very forceful and attack things. So the Dark Spikes are a major force for evil, they think. But one of the members of the group is actually has a member of this group and has this theory that the Dark Spikes don't actually need to be used for this kind of attack, that actually maybe the Dark Spikes have some other purpose. So they start to research the Dark Spikes, start to go on missions to see what Dark Spikes can do. They start to learn their powers, and learn their abilities, which are quite horrific and violent. But they start to realize there's maybe another thing that they can do, that Dark Spikes might have another power or another ability that they don't really know about, that they're not really aware of. So they start to research that more. They start to find out that there's these three main Dark Spike leaders. There's one who is kind of obviously embodying some sort of demon, because he has these huge, giant demon-like wings on the ethereal plane. And there's these two others that are sort of more weak, and all three of them are vying for power. So they start to get involved in this power struggle and try to decide who can they help and who should they be helpful with, who should they not be helpful with. They end up siding with the two smaller factions, and so by the third day, the adventurers, the totem that they get is bear, and there starts to be this sort of murmuring in the shamans that something is up here. Something about the totem is interesting, because bear is all about introspection, looking at yourself, analyzing whether you're doing right and why you act the way you do, which seems kind of very thematic for what they're trying to solve. And by the fourth day, they get buffalo. And then all of a sudden, all the shamans are, going wild, because there's been this prophecy that that this day would come when these particular totems line up. And those of you who are not familiar with how the totem ceremony works, usually there are 3 totems cards that can be picked at random. And those 3 cards, each day they're picking a random one of the 3 cards. And they say that when these particular 3 line up, when you're picking from those 3 cards and these particular totems line up in this order of 4, of mouse to eagle to bear to buffalo, that this is a prophecy that something will happen in Blackspire of great magnitude, and that it hasn't happened in thousands of years. So they are ecstatic that this has happened, and sure enough, that they discover is that there's a new effect that emerges in Blackspire. And in Blackspire, whenever an animal is killed in Blackspire territories, the animal haunts. It becomes like this undead haunt creature, and it sort of observes and watches what is done with the body and its parts and everything, to see if it is honored. And if that being is not honored, if the food is not used for food, if it's treated disrespectfully, if it's somehow, just tossed aside or whatever, just left there, then the haunt will attack or harm the person that killed it, might even hunt them down, might even try to destroy them, they don't know. So this is powerful effect. I think this is really interesting and kind of neat. But they also say that on the 5th day, the totem that they get on that day will influence whatever the other totem effects are. So the totem they get on the 5th day is snake, and snake is all about transformation and changing, and seems also perfectly on theme for what's actually going on with the animals. So this is a great win for them. They managed to get these different orbs that they've been working on to try to get all the orbs to this particular shrine, and try to find all these different orbs and kind of put them together. And they unleash this other effect, which they're trying to influence on the prophecy effect, to try to heal Blackspire's the doors of Primal Fire. And they managed to hunt down all these different Dapracula and defeat them, almost all of them. And then they make a spell using all of these orbs that they found, which they give to one of the oldest shamans in the area, and have him help them to use a spell to try to influence the outcome of events in Blackspire. They don't know what the effect of that is. They all put in their influence, and they try to make a spell, but the results of that are unknown. So that brings us to camp number 7. Camp number 7 was the Delphos Mithril camp.